Hello everybody, Katie Galanti here from the Evolutionary, and as usual, sometimes I do not have time to write. I'm in the middle of a relocation with lots of moving pieces. I'm currently in Italy. A few months ago I was in Canada, 6 months ago I was in Mexico, so there's been a lot of moving around. So I'm not fully set up yet in a place where I can do a lot of writing. But I wanted to just make a few observations about current astrology and some upcoming astrology. I wanted to write something about the Aries stellium, but I didn't have time. And the Aries stellium was yesterday. We had 7 planets in Aries. The Aries energy is lingering a little bit. The moon eventually is going to move out of Aries. The moon moves quickly, and I forgot to kind of look at all of the dates in which stuff shifts out of that. But if I remember correctly, we've got a few days of that influence, and then some of the faster moving planets start moving out of the way. And I just wanted to mitigate a little bit some of the positions that people have taken on that stellium. Because I saw that stellium the first time last year. I was looking forward into 2026, and I was like, ooh, look at this. There's like millions of planets in Aries. Like the whole sky is going to be in Aries. What is going to happen here? However, once I started tuning into it a little bit more, I was thinking, actually, this Aries stellium, I mean, it's a big deal, but it's not as explosive as it may look at a first glance. Because if you think 7 planets in Aries, you're thinking, wow, that's a lot of fire. What is going to happen here? But most of those planets that are in Aries are fast-moving planets, apart from Saturn and Neptune. Saturn takes 2.5 years to move through a sign, and so Saturn is in Aries at the moment, and it's going to be for a while. Neptune takes 14 years to move through a sign, and Neptune is in Aries right now, just at the beginning of it, and it's going to be there for another 14 years. However, both Saturn and Neptune have a restrictive effect on Aries, in the sense that Saturn is putting boundaries on Aries. It's asking Aries to analyze itself, and it restricts the flow of the Aries, so that the Aries has to go deeper. While the Neptune is a dissolving influence, or a spiritualizing influence if we're lucky, but if not, it's a dissolving influence. Or it can be a deceptive influence, but it's a diffusing influence. So when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, okay, so the only 2 planets that actually really carry weight here in the Aries stellium are planets that are kind of diffusing or restricting the Aries energy. So once you started to look at it a little deeper, that stellium did not feel quite as punchy, okay? However, having said that, it's still a very big concentration of Aries energy, likely for most people in one house. So the important thing is to take a look at what house that stellium falls into. So where do you have Aries in your chart? And then to know that that part of your chart is going to be very amplified, or at least it's going to have a spotlight on it of some kind. Although, as I say, it may be a spotlight that has more to do with restriction and dissolution than it has to do with explosive energy, okay? Because I've heard a few people online say, oh, this is a really explosive stellium, but actually it isn't. There's a lot of Aries energy, but it's not Pluto or Uranus in there. It's Neptune and Saturn. So in some ways it's more Neptune and Saturn. It's almost like whatever the Neptune-Saturn conjunction is all about, we were going to get more of it. Okay? So that is my observation about the Aries stellium. And by the way, so far, it's kind of interesting how we look at planets in the future from the past. Like, so we look at things and we think, oh, this planet is going to manifest this way. this planet may manifest this other way. And while we get the archetypes right, almost all the time, things do not manifest exactly as we thought they would. A, because the universe is very creative. It finds all sorts of ways to manifest things. But also, every planetary energy is born, not that it's born, but it shapes form from the energy of the moment in which that aspect is happening. And sometimes 6 months before, it's not super easy to see where that energy is going to be taking form from. And so 6 months prior, you may think, this energy is going to take this form because you're reading it from that moment in the past. But once you get to those 6 months forward, then the energy manifests from that moment in the present, which may be different from where you were looking at it from 6 months prior. So it's very often that things take shape and they don't exactly take the shape that you expected. So for example, with the Neptune and Saturn conjunction in Aries, which by the way energetically is still continuing now, like it's not an exact conjunction, but the two planets are still very close together. So that energy is still unfolding in the world, all right? There was various things that looking ahead, you were thinking, some kind of holy war. That's what I was seeing. I was thinking, this is going to manifest in some kind of empowerment of the Christian right or religious right in general. And then there's going to be a lot of crusading. I kept getting the word crusading. But actually what I am seeing more of now is an intensifying of a spiritual war. Yes, and Neptune is spirituality and Aries is war. But it's a much more subtle spiritual war that we're seeing. The spiritual war that we're seeing is literally between dark forces and light forces for the supremacy over the timeline. And I know that there's some people that are listening to this that maybe don't even understand what it is that I'm talking about because you may not be tapped into the whole timeline thing. But we are in an Earth cycle that is coming to a bifurcation point on what I call a timeline node. And I started seeing this 20 years ago. I think I wrote about this the first time for Paradigm Shift somewhere around 2005. So I've been seeing that for a while. So, and I've been talking about it for a while too. And now there's a lot of people that talk about timeline shift and all the rest of it. But when I started, very few people were talking about it at all. Although people were talking about ascension, they weren't necessarily putting it into terms of timelines. And there is literally a tug of war over this timeline. And what is becoming very clear is that this tug of war is happening not just between factions of planetary power, but it's also happening between literally light forces and dark forces. And as a result of that, two things are happening. One, there's a massive amount of disclosure that is happening with regards to various topics that are uncovering a lot of the planetary darkness so that it can be seen and so that it can be shifted. And then on the other hand, there's a lot of psychic attack going on at the moment. And in fact, I'm in the process of putting out a sale for energy clearings because I'm seeing now, even with people that I have been clearing regularly as part of my work as a healer, there's sort of people that come to me every now and then to get clearings, and so I'm used to what is usually ticking in their field because I clear them often, and they have about 10 to 100 times more pollution in their fields than they would usually have. And that is because there's a lot going on the astral plane right now that is bringing a lot of this dark energy into people's fields. And it's literally a part of the tug of war for the timeline that the dark forces are kind of kicking up all of this entities and dark energy pollution and dark energy streams and you name it to unprecedented degrees on the astral plane. And another thing that I've noticed is that people are talking about this. It's becoming kind of mainstream to talk about psychic attack and these kind of things. Well, it didn't used to be quite as talked about before, right? So now I'm seeing that the Neptune in Aries is bringing up into the collective consciousness the idea that there can be psychic attacks and psychic war to some degree going on the inner planes. And that was not a development that I was expecting. But it is a development that is out there, okay? And also the Neptune-Saturn conjunction in Aries, as it unfolds, it's bringing out the dissolution of a certain world order in order to show what is actually true underneath. But it's operating as a tower moment where, by tower I mean the tower in the tarot, where anything that is not built on solid ground has to go. So when we talk about a tower moment, we mean basically a moment where anything that is not based in truth is just going to go. And we're going through that at the planetary level. So we are seeing now the Neptune-Saturn conjunction in Aries is working as a sort of tower moment for the foundational stuff that is going on in our society, and it's kind of pulling the rug under a lot of things and throwing them in the air and showing us what is actually truth. So there's a dissolution of structures, but the dissolution of structures, it's a dissolution of dark structure. And again, that was not a manifestation that I was necessarily expecting. And I guess if we look at the bigger picture with the astrology, the Neptune in Aries is in aspect with Pluto in Aquarius. So the Plutonian themes are coming in through the sextile with Pluto. And also another observation that I've had recently is that right now Pluto and Uranus, not right this second, but it's going to be more so in the summer, there's going to be this trine between Pluto and Uranus in the air signs, because Uranus is going to go into Gemini very shortly. And then we're going to have a trine between Uranus and Pluto in the air signs that is going to go in and out, in and out, in and out for quite some time. I think I looked at it and it was like 3 or 4 years. Like these two things are going to travel together for a little while. Okay, maybe it's too much, 2 or 3 years, but I have to look at the charts to see. But I remember that it was not 2 minutes. Like it was a fairly large chunk of time. So in some ways, this is a echo of the Pluto-Uranus conjunction that I have in my own chart. That was the signature of the 1960s. And then we had, in the 2012, 2013, we had the Pluto-Uranus square that was going in and out. And now we have the Pluto-Uranus trine. So this is all part of the same cycle. And this cycle is a cycle of great change, okay? But while the square and the conjunction are kind of frictional kind of change, the trine is going to be a very flowy change. And I remember one of my teachers once saying, to not always think that the trine is positive. Like the trine means that these energies flow really well together. So whatever is flowing really well. So it's still positive in manifestation, but that doesn't mean that there is not some discomfort with some of it. Okay. So basically Pluto-Uranus is a very revolutionary, let's change everything kind of energy. And these two Pluto-Uranus planets are going to be in a trine, I think, from the summer going forward for a couple of years at least. Now, Uranus in Gemini. Uranus is going to move out of Taurus soon, where it's been for 7 years. It dipped into Gemini last year for a couple of months. During that time, OpenAI came out with the next generation of ChatGPT. Most people didn't like it, but it was still the next generation. And there was a lot of innovations within the AI field. I think that when Uranus goes into Gemini for good, technology is going to accelerate, the whole AI is going to accelerate, but I also think that the discourse around it is going to accelerate as well. So, because we also have Pluto in Aquarius, so anything that is out of alignment with the AI is going to come to people's attention. Because there is a dark side to technology, and that is going to come to people's attention as well. And definitely there's going to be discourse that is going to start happening around the concentration of power into the hands of the tech elite, because if all of this AI technology is going to revolutionize the world, who rules that technology and who operates that technology is also going to be important. And it should be, because these are people that are going to have a lot of power that previously maybe didn't have quite as much of it. Wherever power goes, you have to assess how that power is behaving and managed. I think that in general, the people are going to want to have some of their power back, because that's what happens when Pluto goes in Aquarius also. So Uranus in Gemini is also going to bring in a lot of new ideas, a lot of new concepts, a lot of new ways of doing things, and very accelerated mental bodies. And if you're an air sign, this may work very well for you, and for some people it may be a bit too much, and there's going to be a need to regulate the nervous system, to integrate the fast mental body. It's going to be a very fast mental body, and so we're going to have to find ways to ground and integrate, and to not get burnt out. And the burnout of air and fire time is different from a more physical kind of burnout. This is more of a mental burnout. It's like the circuits are running too fast and things are getting combusted. Right? So people are going to have to find ways of grounding and being in nature, doing things that are going to bring you back into the body. I also think that there's going to be a big push towards a very digital, a very transhumanist kind of world, and society is going to split into two, and there's going to be the people that are yay about that, and then there's going to be the people that are like, I don't think so, I prefer to continue with a more organic earth. And personally, although I do like technology because it's fun and useful, I actually also agree that we need to stay in the more organic manifestation of our earth, because if we don't, we may not be able to get it back. Okay? So this is an important point in which we are going to be called, if you're a spiritual metaphysical person and you're wanting to be in the higher timeline, you need to stay in the organic zone of organic life, connection to the earth, a connection to your own soul, connection to everything that is real. The technology is very seductive, but it's ultimately leads to places that are not real in the long run. And this is a revisiting of Atlantean themes. The Atlanteans went through this exact same fork in the road, and the bulk of the people chose the more technological route, and eventually the whole of their society went belly up. Grids collapsed, there was all sorts of problems, and that society was done. Very small group of humans rebooted the next cycle of human life, right? Okay. We are at a similar crossroad. We're not quite right in it yet, but that same seduction is reappearing, and from a soul perspective, the same souls are involved, both on the light side and the dark side. There's many Atlantean souls that are being called to learn this lesson again. And this time we're supposed to choose organic over synthetic and augmented and artificial. Not just intelligence, but artificial life. So for example, if we think about artificial life, genetically modified foods, genetically modified this or that, even genetically modified humans, we need to stay out of all of that kind of stuff, okay? And we need to stay as close to real, organic, and natural as possible in all things. Everything else is a seduction, okay? Also, there was something I wanted to say about Uranus in Taurus, that Uranus in Taurus, when I first looked at it, I was like, okay, changes in agriculture, food, money, earthy things, earthquakes, and so on, right? And all of those things have been a thing. We've had changes but also protests around agriculture across the world. There's been all of the Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies thing truly kind of kicked in during Uranus in Taurus. We've also had a boom of plastic surgery, which is Uranian modifications of the body, and transgender type surgeries as well, which is literally changing the body quite radically. So Taurus is very often about the body, about the natural world, about the physical world, and Uranus coming in there to make all these changes, right? So those things did happen. But one of the things that has happened that it only really registered with me towards the end of the transit, which I think is because I needed to go through it without thinking that it was about Uranus, okay, is destabilization of the solid ground that you're walking on. So Taurus is the stable structures of life in some ways. Not the government structures. The government structures, those are like Capricorn, right? But the Taurus thing is more like the day-to-day structures of life. And Uranus coming in there has caused a lot of disruption to those. Look at COVID and lockdowns and, a lot of people relocating to be able to afford to live. A lot of retirees have moved to Portugal, or they moved to South America, or there's been a lot of solopreneurs that have been working from their computers from other countries and so on. And so there's been a lot of this moving around, things not being very solid, and people losing jobs and having to reinvent themselves and so on. And I'm not saying that is going to go away completely once Uranus goes into Gemini, because Uranus is just going to do its disruption in a different way. But it is going to be a different way. It's going to be more in the field of the mind and ideas, and it's in the mind field, and it may change how we do writing. It may change how we do communicating. It may change. I can see the AI all over this one, but I don't think it's going to impact daily life in the same way that Uranus and Taurus did. Some of that Taurian stability may come back, just in a rearranged form. And one of the purposes of that Uranus in Taurus from a evolutionary perspective was to help people to become less dependent on the structures of life and more for stability and more rooted in their root chakras, regardless of what life is doing. So in my case, I moved 9 times in 6 years, and of those 9 moves, 4 were international moves. And so one of the things that I learned through that was you can adapt and make home anywhere, given a little bit of time. And so all of the pieces that tend to be attached to one's home or local environment or whatever, if you learn to detach from that, your root chakra can root pretty much anywhere. And that there's ways of finding stability wherever you anchor, okay? And I'm not saying it wasn't challenging at times, because it was, but that is ultimately what the lesson was. The lesson was you're not dependent on a certain set of permanent externals to be able to root. You can root very quickly in this environment, that environment. And I know at least 3 other people that during the Uranus and Taurus time were bounced around, all of which were light workers, because I think that the Earth itself needed certain lights in certain places at different times, right? So some people were called to move around a lot during this time. But I have a feeling that that may not be quite as prominent a thing as we move forward, okay? So there may be some more stability. Once Uranus moves out of Taurus, we may find that there is a bit more stability, but we are going to be challenged to look at the same set of energies in the field of the mind and communication, okay? And from a technological perspective, because Uranus is always linked to technology somehow, we may also see mind altering or mind augmenting technologies coming through, just the same way that during Uranus in Taurus we saw plastic surgery becoming quite a thing, even at the mainstream level. We may see brain implants, brain chips, brain altering technologies, ways of downloading your memories into something, which I don't recommend. Or phones that you don't have to hold anymore, but you can see them through glasses or whatever. So we're going to see some technologies that have some kind of mind interface coming out as well. All right, when I have a bit more time, I will write a proper article about some of this stuff, but I just thought that since we're getting closer to Uranus moving out of Taurus and into Gemini, that I would just drop these thoughts here so that people can start thinking about them. Uranus is going into Gemini on April 26, which is in less than 10 days. And one of the things that you can do as you're preparing for this is to have a look in your chart and have a look and see where does Gemini fall in your chart, especially the beginning degrees of Gemini. Where do they fall? And that is where Uranus is going to be. And wherever that is, you can expect a Uranian energy of change to start coming into that area of your life. And to do that, just go to astro.com. It's free. You put in your chart data and have a look of where Gemini is on in your chart, okay? I don't do a ton of astrology readings. I don't tend to take on that many astrology clients. I do more healing work than astrology work. But I will take on maybe 3 per month, okay? So if you're interested in having a look at your chart to see where all of these energies of this big shift that we're going through fall for you, you can contact me via my website or even through the Substack thing. I do get the emails that people send through the Substack. And you can contact me for that. And if you are interested in having an energy clearing, you can contact me about that as well. Okay? All right. So, and the energy clearing is important at the moment because people are more loaded with stuff than they think that they are. So I've been strongly guided to put a strong emphasis on the energy clearing work, which is not the only healing work that I do. I do a lot of different kinds of things. But my guides were saying it's time for people to have their energy cleared because there's a lot of interference going on at the moment. Okay? Alrighty, so I'm thinking if there's anything else. Do sign up if you're into the meditation aspect of things and you want to contribute to the planetary shift energetically in a positive way. I have 2 things going on. My Planetary Shifters YouTube channel, which I am going to start posting to more regularly, with planetary meditations that are interactive with planetary energy to help the planet to hold the high frequencies and clear the lower frequencies so that we can steadily move into the higher timeline. I've been doing this work for at least 6 years. In fact, the first meditations I started doing about this were almost 25 years ago. But in the Planetary Shifters format, I've been doing this for at least 6 years now. But I used to do it on my Facebook page, but I'm now guided to do it on YouTube. Okay, so I'm doing it there. If you want to contribute to that, it's all free. Just subscribe, okay? And then I have the archived volumes of the meditations that we've done so far which are now on my website, and you can buy them one volume at a time, and there's 7 volumes, I think, but only 3 at the moment are uploaded. I have to upload the other 4, and those are the meditations that have already been done over the past 6 years, which, however, are still absolutely current in terms of their effects. So, and these effects are both personal and collective. So you can do the meditations for the collective, but you're also healing yourself as you're doing them as well, and you're receiving all of the planetary higher energies personally as well. Okay? All right, that was a longer plug than I intended to do. It is Saturday. I hope that you all enjoy your weekend, and it's a beautiful sunny day here in the mountains in Italy. And so I send you lots and lots of love, and until the next time.